Welcome into episode 6 of Between the Lines. We have our same special guest as last time. Akhilesh is joining us, and we're going to talk a little bit about the NBA at first, and then with the NFL draft coming up this week, starting on Thursday, which we're actually going to be attending. So we're hopefully going to get some good content there. We'll see if we can get anything out for you guys too. But we're going to start with the NBA a little bit, and then go into the NFL draft and just go a little bit more into our teams. So we're gonna start, like I said, with the NBA. Let's start. Let's go back a couple days, and we have the last results from the play-in game. Right, we had our final play-in games on both the East and West side, and we had all our playoffs matchups set, and we have the game ones in all the rounds so far. So before we actually get into the playoffs a little bit, we're gonna start with the play-in, and I'm sure we all saw the Eastern Conference play-in result from last Friday before the Suns Warriors game. We had the Orlando Magic taking on the Charlotte Hornets, a matchup that everyone thought, all right, the Magic after their loss to the Sixers and the Hornets after their win against the Heat, everyone was like, these two teams are going in opposite directions. We have the Hornets that are going up. They look like they're unstoppable against a 10 seed Heat team. Wow. And then we have a Magic team that can't even beat like a Joel Embiidless Sixers team. So everyone going into that matchup was like, all right, the Hornets got to win this. We ended with a final score of the Magic 121, the Hornets 90. LaMelo Ball and a lot of the Hornets players scoring most of their points in garbage time in the second half and everything like that. So before we go into the playoffs a little bit, let's just talk a little bit about LaMelo Ball, guys. So we all started loving LaMelo and everything, his highlights and everything like that. And you guys can stop me if I say anything that's untrue or anything that you don't agree with. So just let me know. But we started LaMelo Ball in his high school era, right? Chino Hills, obviously that team like really good and everything like that. And a guy who gets hyped up mostly because everything he did there was cherry picking. You guys can go back and watch the highlights. Almost everything that he did in terms of his scoring, any records that he or may have like at his high school or anything like that, he cherry picked a lot. A lot of the scouts wrote about that. He didn't really care about defense. He doesn't care about defense now in the NBA. And he just like got all of his points from doing that. And then he's finally going into the league, right? So or into some league, right? He's playing in the professional leagues in Australia. He plays his one season there in 2019, starts in 2019, plays just a couple months, and then he's injured, and he's saying, all right, I'm sitting out the rest of the season. So he already sits out the rest of that first season going into like 2020. Obviously, the season might have been impacted because of COVID anyways, but he decides I'm going to sit out the rest of the season, prepare for the NBA draft. Great. You're going into the NBA draft. You're one of the Ball brothers. LeVar Ball, he actually made it, right? All of his sons are going to be there. Gets drafted to the Charlotte Hornets. They make the play in the first year, right? And they make the play in the 9-10 game against the Indiana Pacers, which they lose by a score of 144 to 117. They're out of the playoffs, the postseason within their first year there. But I'm sure it's going to go up from there, right? Like I'm sure they're going to keep making the plan and everything like that. And then they don't return to the plan. They don't return to the plan for another couple years. And then LaMelo Ball just has played the same consistent brand of basketball that he's played the last like couple years in the NBA. He doesn't care about defense. He just shoots all these flashy shots and things like that. He's not a winning basketball player. LaMelo Ball is not a winning basketball player, never has been, and never will be. We saw that evident against the Orlando Magic, and I'm sure all you guys saw like what people were saying about him in the media too, things like that. I'm not the only one saying this. But that's my thoughts on LaMelo Ball so far. Anything that I said was incorrect, guys, or anything you want to like refute or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like this was like it felt like the one year, LaMelo like he's kind of like a winning player. It seemed like, Hornets really overachieved, played well. Obviously, Concanipple a big factor there. And then just when we thought, hey, is he playing winning basketball? He starts the game with 0 points and three fouls, just doing LaMelo things, not really having any effort out there, just trolling around. And yeah, now he's at home, just chilling at his mansion, no love for the game. It's a shame because his highlights are like as you said, he's like one of the most flashy players. Like he plays like he has AirPods in. He's fun to watch, but from the highlights, when you watch his actual games, it's been a disaster. What do you think, Aki?
I'll give you that. He's a great House of Highlights player. But the difference between House of Highlights and Bleacher Report is Bleacher Report posts who wins the championship. House of Highlights shows who has a good crossover, tweet hezzy, things like that. He's a good House of Highlights player. And on top of that, Bleacher Reports also posts about players that are dirty players that do dirty things, like we saw in that game, tripping Bam Adebayo. In
That's
the
true.
play, he was just like, oh, yeah, in his post-game presser, talks about, I didn't really see it. My brother, you were on the ground and clearly tried to grab his leg, and you were already on the ground. It's not like you were breaking your fall or anything like that. And this is after he had a previous incident with Bam Adebayo. A lot of this probably saw the clip resurface after it happened last Tuesday. A couple years back, he did the same thing where he tried to trip Bam Adebayo when he was on the ground. I don't know what he has in for Bam, right? I don't know like why he's going after the same guy twice or anything like that. But it's just, I mean, Aki, what are your thoughts on that? And then we can start to go into like some of the other game ones that we saw. But any thoughts on like LaMelo Ball just as a player first?
I don't know what you guys think of LaMelo Ball before the play-in, but throughout his career, I always thought that he was so inefficient. He's so injury prone. He will never be the best player on a championship team. I don't think the Hornets could go anywhere with
Yes.
LaMelo Ball. I mean, I don't know what you guys thought before the play-in, but he may seem like a flashy player. That's why people like him. They get a lot of views on Instagram because he gets those 360 3-point shots or whatever, those cool passes, but that's not winning basketball. He can't be efficient for a long period of time. And I mean, the Hornets were not even a good team before Con Canuple came in this season. So LaMelo scored, like you said, Jay, he was cherry picking. I mean, he scored what, 21 out of his 23 points in the third quarter when the
Hmm.
Hornets were already down almost 30 points.
Yeah.
And I mean, at that point, what's that going to do? I mean, you're already down 30. And I think I saw a quote where LaMelo said that he should have just taken the ball from the beginning. And he was like, the coach just ran too many plays. I mean, winning basketball is not just isolating yourself and trying to score. I mean, if you can't play within a system, that's not going to lead to long-term success. So I think we revealed the true Hornets this game, and I guess it's going to be interesting where they go from now in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, like the Hornets do have a good core. I'm not gonna lie. Like they do have good players: Brandon Miller, Concacaf, Moussa Diabate. They've developed a lot of players, but like you said, and I think we all agree, like LaMelo Ball is not gonna be the player leading you to a championship. So they're gonna have to see what they can do in the offseason, maybe make some trades or something like that, and we'll see what their draft looks like. But so let's talk about how about the other team on the other side of that playing in the Orlando Magic, and a team that was the eighth seed and probably going into before last night. So like we're recording this on Monday night, so going to that Sunday night game versus the Pistons, still like not great vibes, even though they were able to beat the Hornets team that everyone's thinking they're more than likely firing the head coach Jamal Mosley, probably trading superstar or their supposed superstar player Paulo Banchero, or like moving some pieces around. Who actually go into Detroit, going to the number one seeds house in the Eastern Conference, and actually pull out a game one. They steal game one on the road. So in terms of what I saw in this game, and I want to know your guys' thoughts on it. I think honestly, like this may be one of the best series we have in the Eastern Conference in the first round. Actually, now I'm sort of thinking just based on how the matchups are. The biggest advantage that the Detroit Pistons had on a lot of the other teams they played during the regular season, one of the things they had was their just physical size, their advantage in this physical strength and size they had on a lot of other teams. Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, even their guards like Cade Cunningham, Sar Thompson, all those guys, they're just very strong, like well built for their position and things like that. They were able to like execute that force and just use that to like overpower a lot of their teams. But the Magic are actually one of the teams, regardless of what we think about their jump shooting, their offensive efficiency, they have a team that's really built well to combat that. They have Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero, Wendell Carter Jr., even a guy like Jalen Suggs. He's really a strong defender, even for his height at the guard position. So it's just a team that's able to meet force with force, and they're able to take away the Pistons' like biggest advantage. So I don't. I'm still going to take this Pistons to win the series, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than more definitely closer to like a 6 or 7 game series as opposed to a sweep, a 4 game sweep, or even a gentleman's sweep that we thought. But your guys' thoughts on how the series dynamics might have flipped or anything like that after game one?
Yeah, I think like as you said, like the Pistons, their biggest advantage all year has been their physicality. And I think like a stat from the game that summarizes what happened pretty well was so coming into that game, the Pistons led the league in like paint scoring at roughly 58 points per game. And in that game, Magic actually outscored the Pistons in the paint by 20. So clearly they like have the physical matchup that they can do to meet the Pistons. Like Jalen Duren had a pretty poor game for his standards, whereas like Wendell Carter had like 17 and 7. He's always been like kind of picked on for being an undersized center. Well, he shut everyone up and played really good physical basketball. And on the Pistons side of things, it's like it was just Cade Cunningham and the rest of the like squad. Like no one else was really doing anything. Tobias Harris had 17, but everyone else, like guys like Dennis Jenkins, who had been playing well to end the year, he shot from 1 for 7. Like everyone just played really poor basketball. And I mean, Cade should be the guy who's kind of like recovering right now. Like, he should be getting up to speed. Everyone else should be playing well because he hasn't had that many like proper reps since he came back from that lung injury. But I mean, they got to figure things out. I think, like you, the Pistons will end up winning in probably 6 games, maybe 7, but they got to figure this out because like always losing a game at home really hurts for the series, especially as the one seed. It pretty much destroys all your confidence.
Tish, I agree with you. I think that this game just represents the phrase Cadenum. I mean, you know how Cade went off even though he should be recovering from an injury. I think it's interesting because the Magic have the players that can neutralize the players on the Pistons surrounding Cade. You have very good defensive guards on the Magic, such as Desmond Bane, Jalen Suggs, and Tristan da Silva, who can all are good defensive guards and forwards that can neutralize all the offensive creators around Cade. And it's almost as if the Magic lost on purpose to the Sixers to get to play the Pistons instead of the Celtics. But I think Franz Wagner coming back is very big for the Magic, especially because he's another shot creator next to Paulo Banchero. So, like you all, I think the Pistons will still be able to win in six. I mean, it might be. Originally, I thought if this matchup happened, the Pistons might have easily won in four, but looks like we got to give more credit to the Magic than we originally thought.
Yeah, and I think like Artish, if you wanted to say something
Oh
else.
yeah, just real quick. And like kind of to like build off what you were saying there, Aki, is like the problem for the Magic all year hasn't really like they've had their injuries, ups and downs, but they've always had like an underrated roster in terms of just like purely personnel. But like Jamal Mosley's had a tough time kind of getting everyone to like be cohesive with one another and get team wins. So we kind of saw like I mean Jamal Mosley has been on the hot seat to end the year. So kind of figure things out for this game. I think all the starters were in double digits, so they can keep the momentum up. We could see like the 8 seed Miami Heat a couple of years ago going on a run, but I think the Pistons will actually they'll just take care of things. But definitely an interesting series going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, and so congrats to the Magic getting their first road playoff win under Jamal Mosley. And we'll see how this series goes from there on out. Let's take one of the other series that we were thinking about that we originally thought would be lopsided, and it sort of looked that way actually. So we're going to touch a little bit on the Spurs and Blazers game. So we saw game one there. Obviously, the Spurs were able to take up game one pretty comfortably. A couple like tense moments throughout, but we see in the Magic and Pistons series, we saw a team in the Pistons, a higher seeded team, maybe a couple guys that are starting looks like they have might some of them have those like first playoff jitters or something like that. A couple of guys that have played in the series last year against the Knicks, but maybe just feeling a little bit uncomfortable in their first playoff minutes. We saw a team on the other side of that, especially in the Spurs, with a lot of guys playing their first playoff minutes. The number one guy in their Victor Wembanyama. We saw them really just take it to the Blazers and just show that like they aren't really worried about this playoff stage and things like that. We saw Wemby drop, I think it was 35 points. That breaks the record for the most points in a Spurs playoff debut, breaking Tim Duncan's record while he's there watching and everything like that. Um, so I just think that the Blazers are not don't really have. I mean, obviously going into the series, not none of us thought they had like a chance to win or anything like that, and they really didn't have too many advantages in general in a path to like win the game. But I just think they're losing their biggest thing, which is Denny Avdia's ability to just drive into the paint and be able to make things happen. They're either going to the rim, going to the rack and getting points, or able to kick it out or get to the free throw line and things like that. It's really hard when you're playing a team where their baseline for their best player is just the best player, best defensive player in the world. He will never. That's something that's always going to be there. His presence in the paint is just going to make it hard for a lot of other teams to score in Wemby. And obviously, you saw his offensive game be there in full force, and you can just see like how dangerous that's going to be and how hard that's going to be to play against when you're like another team like the Blazers. So if they can put this together for 4 games, I think this series is going to be an easy sweep. Maybe if they lose one back in Portland or something like that. But any thoughts on Victor Wembanyama's playoff debut and any changes on the outlook for the Spurs for the rest of the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, like Wemby pretty much just I know like we talk about playoff jitters, but it seemed like he was just like a seasoned vet the way he played, dropping like 35. Um, And the other thing about the Spurs that stood out to me is just which this has been the case all year, but seeing it in the playoffs with such a young team is pretty impressive. Like they just their entire depth, they found ways to impact like the game on so many different levels. Like you saw like Julian Champagny having like 3 steals off the bench. You saw Stephon Castle like being an all-around player with like 7 rebounds, 7 assists, something like that. So they just have such a complete team that I mean, they could easily make a run to the conference finals, but on the Portland side of things, like Denny Avdia has really been playing well, having like I think he had a double double, 30-point double double. And to me, like the Blazers, they've already exceeded their expectations by like beating the Suns at home in the play-in to even get this 7 seed. So like kudos to them there. But I don't think they really stand a chance, especially if I'm not mistaken, I think Denny picked up like a lower leg injury sometime in that game. He returned eventually, but he was like visibly shaken, limping around. He had like ice wrapped up around his legs. So if there's star guys out, this could easily be a sweep in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to reiterate what you both said. I think it's not going to change my outlook on the Spurs. I think we all knew that the Spurs were. I mean, I think we all had the Suns playing the Spurs in the first round, but either way, with the Suns or Blazers, I think the Spurs will still either win in four or five. And I think Wemby was very impressive in his playoff debut, but I think what was most impressive from this matchup was Danny Avdia. I think that like you said, Jay Wemby with his presence in the paint, his defensive presence would be very hard for the Blazers to score. But Denny's shot making, especially from the mid range, especially I saw in the fourth quarter where he was making a couple shots over Wemby, was impressive. So I'm not sure if that's sustainable long term, but like you said, Tish, the Blazers already did exceed their expectations, so they should still be proud of where they are right now, and it will be interesting to see how they move forward.
Yeah, and then so we saw a team there. Looks like we have a guy who's gonna be a playoff riser for the obviously coming future and things like that, and Victor Wembanyama. Let's touch on two more of the game ones that we had briefly. Let's go to one series that I think coming into the series, me and Aki cannot say we predicted what happened in that first game, but Tish could definitely claim this one. Let's talk about LeBron James and the Lakers taking down the KD-less Rockets. We will say KD was out of that game, but they were still able to take the Rockets down and win the game one in LA, steal game one in LA. Obviously, we don't talk too much about a home team being able to steal game one and being that much of an underdog in a series, but we certainly know the situation going into this game. The Lakers are certainly the underdogs, still the underdogs in the series, I would say, because we are assuming that KD is going to be back for game two, which is going to be tomorrow night. But Tish, why don't you have the floor? Like, just talk about just briefly touch on like what you think the Lakers did well, and do you see this changing anything in the outlook of the series between the Rockets and them?
Yeah, I mean, like as much of like a dopamine rush as it was, like seeing game one, obviously you have to take it with a grain of salt with KD being out and the Rockets having pretty much like nothing going on offense all game without their main guy and Kevin Durant. I think there still are some positive takeaways for the Lakers for that game. Like one was like surprisingly because the Rockets they've been known for their defense, probably a top three defense in the league, but the Lakers still shot like 61% from the field, whereas the Rockets shot like 38%. So I mean that could be an interesting dynamic going forward because Kevin Durant isn't really a defensive contributor at this point in his career for the Rockets right now with all their perimeter defense they have. So I mean, the Lakers' offense was still impressive to me. Luke Kennard, it's like we're good, Luca. We got Luke now, dropping 27 in his playoff debut for the Lakers. Shot 5 for 5 from three. I think one thing they were saying during like the commentary was, which I think I agree because honestly, the only way they're going to win this series, especially with KD, he isn't confirmed for game two, but especially with like the longer absence until game two happening Tuesday, probably will return. Like they're gonna have to match KD on offense. And so I think like JJ Redick was saying how like he'd rather have Luke Kennard go like 4 for 10 from three versus like 2 for 3. Sorry, like basically pretty much just like replacing Luca's volume, getting more shots up and sacrificing some efficiency for more output. So that's gonna be interesting. And then of course, best for last, King James. In year 23, age 41, still finding ways to break his own records. Broke his record for the most assists in a quarter in any of his playoff games, starting out the game with 8 assists and ended with 13. So, I mean, great start for the Lakers, but honestly, we'll just see what happens with Kevin Durant back. Still think the Lakers are definitely underdogs in this series, but could be a bit more interesting than people thought.
I think that when I was talking about earlier, I said that this was, the team surrounding LeBron without Luca and Austin Reeves is probably the worst roster that LeBron's had in the playoffs. But honestly, I can't lie, they did surprise me in that first game. Kevin Durant, even though he did not play, he was not he's known to be a pretty good all-time defensive player, but he was not going to be as big of a defensive presence in this game. So even if he returns, I still expect the Lakers offense to continue. I mean, you had Luke Kennard, like Tish said have scored 27 points and going 5 for 5 from three. And then you have DeAndre Ayton, who did very well in his Lakers playoff debut, scoring 19 points and going 8 for 10 from the field. And I think that Ayton did impress me because he did was able to be part of the effort that neutralized Sengun. I mean, without KD, you'd expect more from their all-star, their number two all-star, their second best offensive player in Sengun, but he had a very poor performance on defense and offense. And I think that if the Lakers are offense at least is able to continue this effort, I don't know, maybe I have to change my prediction, but I guess we'll see.
Okay, so you watch out.
Yes. I guess we'll see what happens at the end of this series. The last one that we'll touch on just briefly before we get to the NFL draft stuff. Let's hit that series in Denver. We had the Nuggets taking down the Wolves in game one. Definitely a game of runs. We saw like the Wolves take a lead towards the beginning of the game. The Nuggets come back towards the second and third quarter, get the lead. We saw the Wolves crawl back a little bit towards like the end of the third. But then it was just the fourth quarter. Jokic and Murray, they just ran that two-man game, and it was hard for the Wolves to stop. So, I mean, I do think like obviously you two picked the Nuggets to win the series. So, and I think like we all expected them to take game one. I think the Wolves they're going to be able to take game two. At least I'm hoping they do because I still got them as my pick. I'm going to expect a better performance from the Wolves tonight. I do hopefully see that. I want to see better just effort from them all around. I'm pretty sure you guys all saw the clips of Julius Randle just jogging back on defense after a layup or things like that. A missed layup, things like that, complaining for calls and things like that. We saw that crazy play where the ball went all the way to like the half court, and then Jamal Murray had to put up a crazy shot just because of the shot clock. And you see Aaron Gordon, who's behind Jamal Murray when he takes the shot, and all the Wolves players are still on their side of the court, and then the ball goes off. And I mean, it was a hard play to judge. Like you didn't really know if it went off the rim or not, but you shouldn't really leave that to the refs. You got five guys there. You can just go get the ball, and all they'll stand there watching for the refs to get it, or the refs to just call the play, and then Aaron Gordon's able to run back in and get the points for them on that play. So I just want to see a better effort from the Wolves tonight. I think they still have the personnel to be able to guard it. They have a lot of like strong players that are able to like sort of obviously no one's going to be able to neutralize Jokic. We've seen he's the best player in the game for a reason. Like we're not able to see that, but they do have some stronger players in the front court, especially. So I'm hoping to see a better performance from them tonight. Any thoughts on you guys? Did anything change your prediction for the series? I doubt it. Anything you think you need to see the Wolves do better? And then we'll hit on the NFL draft stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Cat man, just 7 for 19 from the field. I'll give him some grace. He's been dealing with that. I think they said it's kind of like a runner's knee
The
situation.
runner's knee
Steph is
issue,
having.
yeah. Hopefully that's not. I mean, it looks like it will be something that's going to be limiting through the series, but
Yeah.
that's something obviously you can't like predict. But we keep going.
And then we saw him try to pull like the Shea gimmick, like smiling after game one, acting like it's all good. But I mean, all jokes aside, it's still anyone's series to me. I still would lean the Nuggets, but as you said, like it was a game of runs. I think the Nuggets were up like double digits late in the fourth quarter, and they still managed to like blow that lead. Ultimately, ended up winning, but it's like that phrase to me is like when you're the Nuggets and you're going against like Minnesota, no lead is ever safe. We saw that in their like playoff series last year, so definitely got to be careful there. But I think one thing that was interesting after the game, like Anthony Edwards was asked and about like what may have went wrong in the game, and I think he was talking about how like earlier on they started with a lot of like ISO ball, which started to work because I think they were up double digits at some point in the first quarter. But as the game went on, either the Nuggets adjusted defensively or the Timberwolves just like shifted on their offense. They started to go to sorry, they started with a lot of like ball movement and they shifted the ISO ball later on. And so as a result, we saw like the offense kind of like freeze up. Guys like Jaden McDaniels had lower output as a result. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe they can figure out what's going on there. Finch and the staff can figure out. But another thing is like Rudy Gobert scoring 17. Can that happen again in another playoff game? I don't know. We'll see. But to me, I'm definitely not counting out the Wolves, but I think I'd still lean the Nuggets to 6 here.
I
Yeah,
mean,
and
I
before
wouldn't
you
be
go,
surprised.
Aki, I just
Sorry,
want
you
to
go ahead.
go on what Tish was saying. Just like third quarter, especially when the Nuggets started going more of that run, you could like count. You were counting way too many possessions where you saw not Anthony Edwards or Mike Conley or I assume whoever was the guard at that time, main charge of bringing up the ball, giving it to Julius Randle and letting him have post work. Julius Randle, he's got some post bag work every now and then, but we don't want to see the offense being run through there. And like you said, the Rudy Gobert, I don't know if we can rely on the 17 points for him, but go ahead, Aki.
I mean, I was gonna say I don't think that. I mean, it's not impossible for Rudy Gobert to go off again. I mean, I think that Jokic is not a one of those defensive centers you expect. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't really say that this game is gonna change any of our series prediction. To be honest, a series doesn't really start until a team wins on the road, and just the Nuggets winning at home is not gonna be that significant. So, I guess it depends on game two to see how the series goes. And I mean, I'm just gonna reinforce my take from last week that Anthony Edwards is a playoff dropper. I mean, Tish said it himself. He is called Can't Fan for a reason. I mean, 7 for 19 from the field. If you can't, I mean, I don't want to hear about the injury excuse. If you're playing in the playoffs, that means you're healthy enough. I don't want to hear about the injury excuse. He is a playoff dropper. He's not a playoff riser like Wemby or Jokic. So I guess we'll see. Let's see if he can improve. But this is just my game one thoughts. And uh, it's also interesting to note that Jokic will go off. He did get his, it's not surprising, his 30-point triple double. And I think the Nuggets can still go on a deep run because you have Jamal Murray who went 7 for 22 from the field. He wasn't very efficient and he had 16 free throws. And you have Jokic's teammates that are not playing very well, and the Nuggets are still able to win against a good team, the Timberwolves. So I think that's pretty sustainable and it can go long term. And yeah, those are just my thoughts about this game.
Yeah. So expecting a better bounce back performance from the Wolves. Hopefully, we'll see if they can steal game two on the road and we get a 1-1 series. Or like you said, even if the Nuggets take that second home game, like you said, Aki, a series that colloquial saying everyone has. Series doesn't start until road team wins one of the games. So we'll see, and let's move on to the NFL draft now.
Okay, so now we're gonna preview the NFL draft. As Jay said in the intro, we're planning on attending this Thursday, Friday, so maybe we'll get some live reactions there. But just gonna give some previews on our teams, like going into the draft, some prospects. So let's start with, is that the Giants coach in our Zoom call here? Aki, you wanna start things off?
I can never beat John Harbaugh, former Ravens head coach, Steelers owner. You can never call me John Harbaugh, but
Oh, and
I
speaking
guess we
of,
can.
yeah, we're all repping our teams as you guys can see, Steelers, Packers, Giants. But go ahead.
Yes. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing, that happened in draft week was the Dexter Lawrence trade from the New York Giants to the Cincinnati Bengals for their 10th overall pick. I've been a Giants fan since for like, 5 or 6 years for now, so almost Dexter Lawrence's whole career. So it was pretty upsetting to see him be traded. We he did have some good seasons with us, but uh I think especially last season he did not perform well. I mean, even though he did play all games, he was not a very good run defender. His pass rush was not good, and I think the Bengals did trade for him, especially that high draft pick for what they expect him to do. So just my thoughts on that. I think that Dexter Lawrence did not want to be here. I mean, the Bengals did sign him to a 1 year, $28 million contract, and the Giants offered him a 28 AAV, but for multiple years. So if he did not want to sign with that, that means he did not want to be with the Giants. So I think this was the best offer or return we could have gotten for him, and that was a 10th overall pick. And I think that especially for a team that is in the middle of rebuilding or competing, I think that two top 10 picks will do wonders for this team. So, Tish, what are your thoughts on this trade?
Yeah, and I don't know if I would say you were really too sad that Dexter Lawrence was traded, if I remember the group chat correctly. But anyways, yeah, I mean, definitely a blockbuster trade. Looking at, I think to me at least, the Giants definitely won this trade pretty significantly. Just like, Dexter Lawrence wanted to move on. Giants got like a top 10 pick for him. I mean, you can't really ask for much more. And then I understand the move from the Bengals point of view to an extent. Like it's kind of like a win now move. I think there's some report that came out today that like this is pretty much like the win now year for Joe Burrow to like determine if he wants to be like a lifelong Bengal or not. So go ahead, get your guy. But at the same time, like they didn't want to pay Trey Hendrickson, so they got rid of him. And then they traded their first round pick and paid the same money to like arguably a just as impactful, if not less, maybe slightly more impactful player. So I don't know. Bengals are going to be the Bengals, haven't won a Super Bowl for a reason. Can't say the same for my team, but yeah. What else you want to say about the Giants?
I mean, just yeah, I mean that was the best offer that they could have gotten for him. So I do agree with you, the Giants from the trade. So I think that just makes the draft even more exciting for me, especially having two top 10 picks. But looking at the biggest needs, I think that just looking at the roster, I think the biggest needs are right guard, who his contract just finished, and after trading for Dexter Lawrence, oh yeah, Dexter Lawrence away, we do have a need in defensive interior linemen, which I think both of them could be addressed in the draft or after the draft, especially I've been seeing reports on those two being addressed after the draft and free agency to get a comp pick for them. So I think that's a very intriguing method for John Harbaugh. And I think also our next needs would be linebacker and safety. And yeah, so Tish, those are our needs. I guess we can talk about prospects after we each talk about our needs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just this one question I have is like, so now you have like two top 10 picks. I think it's what, picks 5 and 10, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So like, is there any slight ounce of concern that Joe Shane might mess it up again? We saw the last time he had two top 10 picks, which is why I was like cracking up there. He drafted Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau. So are you confident? Are you concerned? What do you think's gonna happen there?
I mean, if you look back in 2022, Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal were the right picks. I mean, based off all the reports, all the mock drafts, I mean, they were the right picks to make. It was not the wrong picks. It was the coaching staff, it was the development that, struggled to develop them into the players they were supposed to be. I think hopefully having a new coach, having a bunch of players that Harbaugh brought in and not having the same developmental staff, the same defensive coaches, offensive coaches. Hopefully that would make a difference this season. But uh, I think right now it's more important to make sure that they get the guys they want and make sure it falls to them, and then hopefully trust in this new developmental staff to help them grow as the players are supposed to be. But yeah, Evan Neal, he is a bust, but I think Kevon and Thibodeau is they're definitely not playing like the 5 and 7 picks that they were meant to be, but it's a new culture and hopefully things change.
That's true. So we talk about the Giants a little bit. Let's get your thoughts, Tish, on the Steelers and what they you think they're going to be doing. So they have that first round pick, obviously, and then they're going to move into their second and thirds. But what do you think are their needs specifically? What do you think they might attack with that first round pick? And any other thoughts you might have for their later round picks? What they want to like build up, which is support with on the back end of the roster.
Yeah, so I think like the Steelers right now, I mean, the biggest question for pretty much like the last like 8 years has been like quarterback. Big Ben did play until like the early 2020s, but I mean, I'll say it as a Steelers fan, he overstayed his visit. So I mean, or his time in the league. So I mean, it's been the biggest question mark. We tried the Kenny Pickett experiment, didn't really go well. Tried like that carousel of like Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, that didn't go well. Then we brought in good old gunslinger Aaron Rodgers, greatest throw of the
Yes,
football.
sir.
Some say, Jay might say, I'll agree. But
Yeah.
to his credit, I'll say that it was probably the best quarterback play the Steelers have had in probably the last since like 2017, 2018.
That's a low bar, by the way.
Not wrong, but I'm not taking that from a Daniel Jones Giants fan. So, anyways, um, now the biggest question has been, and my frustration right now is the fact that Aaron Rodgers hasn't made his like commitment to the team. I will say that there is like an understanding behind the scenes that he has committed to the team, and it kind of makes sense if you just like follow the moves where bringing in Mike McCarthy, getting Michael Pittman, kind of making more moves for older guys like Jamel Dean on defense. Just like we wouldn't be doing all that for like getting a rookie quarterback. So, and we have roughly like 20 million cap, which is enough for A-Rod's contract plus any remaining moves. So if you ask me, I think Aaron Rodgers is returning, but I just don't like the uncertainty basically of like, is he coming? Is he not? And there's like a report today saying that it wouldn't be released until like after the draft if he's coming back or not. But I'm just going to assume that he will be back with the team. I think that's what things are pointing towards. And so, given that, I think we could go with Rodgers for another year and maybe draft a later round quarterback, especially just because this year, aside from like Heisman Doza at number one, there isn't a lot of quarterback depth. So wouldn't really be too keen on taking a quarterback this year. And so then the biggest needs are probably guard on offense, specifically like the left side of the line where we just saw like Isaac Seumalo left the team, so pretty much have no one at left guard. And in general, the left side of the offensive line is pretty hampered right now. Broderick Jones had that pretty dirty neck injury against the scumbag Bears. Jay can probably relate for his hatred against that team, but been out since pretty much like early in the season with a pretty bad neck injury. And so he's going to get reevaluated in a couple of days or weeks here, see if he can return, but wouldn't be relying on him too much to come back. So definitely want to get a guard. We'll go into our specific prospects in a bit, but then obviously wide receiver, DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman are good receivers, but they're both kind of like older X guys, don't really have a good pure slot. So we did have that in Calvin Austin, but take care of him, Ocky. He's on your team now. Take care of him. But yeah, he's gone now, so probably got to get a slot guy. And then also in general, just like another DB would be helpful. Obviously, you brought in Jamel Dean, Jaquan Brisker from the Bears, so those are good two signings. But you can never have enough depth at cornerback, safety. So, and especially this year where there's like a lot of like later round availability for DBs and corners, a lot of like volume. I think it'd be smart to use like a third or fourth round on some DB there. And especially since I think the Steelers have like the most top 100 draft picks in the league. So maybe could even move up into like the first or second round again, but we'll see what happens there.
So one
Yeah,
question
no,
I have for you, Tish,
Yeah.
is your uncertainty regarding Aaron Rodgers stemming from the fact that reports are telling me that Ty Simpson is going to be attending the draft in Pittsburgh on Thursday for day one. So is your uncertainty for Aaron Rodgers stemming from the fact that Ty Simpson might be drafted with pick 21 to the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I think the uncertainty is I think he will return to the team next year. I think like for him looking from his point of view, like he didn't really have any major injuries. He had like that one wrist injury where he missed a game, but I mean that was just like that wasn't related to like a bad offensive line. That was just like an unfortunate play. So from his point of view, like he had a top 10 O line. He had a productive season for his standards at this age, like 40 plus. So I think he'll return, but there is some uncertainty, I'll say, especially with us having so many draft picks. And I've seen like too many mock drafts of keeping our pick 21, but then also trading up into the end of the first round and getting a guy like Ty Simpson. I don't think I could handle that. If I'm in Pittsburgh, like, I mean, when we're all at the draft this Thursday, if I see that happening, oh man, it's gonna be a rough night. But
I mean, the last time my team traded up for a quarterback was the Giants with Jackson Dart. So never know what happens. So
You
guess
never
we'll
know.
see.
And your team could always go the route. We've seen it work in the past. Obviously, recently we don't see teams like go through this method as much. But we've seen the guy that's currently quarterbacking your team, or quarterbacked last year, Aaron Rodgers. We saw, even though he was drafted towards the end of the first round, still a first round pick, he sits those years behind Brett Favre. We've seen guys like Patrick Mahomes sit that year behind Alex Smith. And we've seen like that can be helpful for a young quarterback. Like even if you do get a guy like Ty Simpson or some other like first round quarterback or at the end of the first round, or even second round. It shouldn't be a guy that you'd expect to like start right away because you don't want him to put him to a situation where, like you said, you still have some holes in the roster, and especially you wanted to figure out the offensive line part. You don't want to put him sort of behind the eight ball, so to speak, by putting him behind there and just like say like, all right, kid, like go work with what you got. Like you want to give him a couple reps, maybe a year or even two, like behind the scenes. Just let him get those training camp reps. Obviously, the timeline for like quarterbacks has really been like sped up in the last like couple years or so. Your team's probably going to get a lot of flack for doing that. That's what my team got a lot of flack for Jordan Love all those years. But we've seen, I mean, there's been cases where it hasn't worked out, but you've seen really good cases where it just does help a guy to like have him sit a couple of years. So like you never know like what the situation could be like with the quarterback.
yeah, and I think there's like a famous GM who once said like the best time to get a quarterback is when you don't need a quarterback. So could have some value. Like probably A-Rod to be one of the best vets in the league. I think Will Howard had a lot of positive things to say sitting behind A-Rod for a year. So yeah, that could be an option there. But let's get into the Packers. What are your thoughts, Jay, on Green Bay going into next year and going into this draft? What do you think are some needs that need to be addressed?
Yeah, so I think we sort of saw just going into what last season looked like into this season and some of the picks. And obviously, we're going into this year with a little bit of uncertainty still on the defensive end, I would say. I would still say, like, it's mostly the trenches. And I think a lot of teams could say that trenches is something they're always worried about. But I am worried a little bit about how we're going to attack the offensive line this year in the draft. And we did a little bit in terms of like free agency and sort of moving off some guys, especially letting center Elton Jenkins go and having Sean Ryan sort of just be able to like fill into that role if he can. And then we're going to see differently how some of the guys can fill in the back end. But I do want to see some sort of more guard slash center depth. So I want to see guys that's able to have that positional flexibility. We got a guy, Elton Jenkins, that was able to consistently for like 3 to 4 or even like 5 years or play all five spots in the offensive line at a solid place. Obviously, he was best at left guard. We could see him have that center flexibility and switch to the right side. We even saw him play tackle at one point. He's played all five positions of the offensive line for us. That's not something you're looking for in every single offensive line player because that's something that's really hard to get. And just like a body type that's hard to find because you don't have guys that play tackle that can sort of fit the body mold of like a center or guard. But we want to see guys with positional flexibility and just give them the option for different backups and things like that. I feel like we are set in like the tackle position. I like where we're at with Jordan Morgan moving to the left side and then Zach Tom playing the right side. And I'm all right with what we have in terms of the guard, but I do guards with the starting right now, but I do want to see if we can get some more of that back end depth in the guard and center in the interior offense line. And switching over to the defensive line, like we mentioned before, I think we have like a strong like outside the starters of the edge rushers and sort of like those defensive ends with Micah Parsons, who's obviously maybe hampered in the first couple weeks or maybe start the week on the pup list or something like that due to missing because of his ACL injury. But I'm expecting him to bounce back and be better than ever when he comes back from the injury. And then we have a guy like Lucas Van Ness who showed out and really like showed like good bursts on film from what we saw and just like playing a lot better than the guy who's formerly started for us, Rashawn Gary. Just an absolute disaster of a season from him. When Micah Parsons went down, he was the guy that was sort of leading the locker room and like telling the reporters, we gotta play like better than we had before because of Michael Parsons going down. You didn't exactly do that, bro. Like you were the one talking about all that and like telling the team they should play like that, and you weren't playing with the requisite effort. So I'm glad we sort of were able to move off that. It seemed like it was a breakup sort of waiting to happen. So I like where we're at with the starters with Lucas Van Ness and Michael Parsons on both sides when they're both healthy. But I do think we need to fill some of that back end depth a little bit more, and then see if we can fill the defensive line and interior defensive line a little bit. We have Devontae Wyatt coming back from his injury, hopefully, and he's played a really good season last season before the injury, so I'm expecting him to continue that. Signing Javon Hargrave in free agency, just like that, bolstering inside of the defensive line. I like what we have at linebacker, some younger guys, and obviously with I think a superstar, future superstar at least, and Edge Cooper at the Mike linebacker position or the Will linebacker position. Safety room, I still think is really good, led by Xavier McKinney. Two really strong secondary guys in Jamal Bullard and Evan Williams, and then some good backups there too. Corner, I think, is the last piece that we definitely want to address. I was a big proponent of them going after someone in free agency, one of the big stars or something like that, and they just weren't able to do that. I don't know if they're like more keen on like running back with what they have in free agency. Newsflash, I don't think it's gonna work, guys. We really have to like upgrade that room. So I do want to see them sort of attack that in the second round, potentially the third round, or even get some lower end guys and maybe some undrafted free agents to see if they can get something working there. But I do think defense is really what we have to focus on. I think the offense has sort of worked itself out, and I really like what we have the skill position and things like that. But I really think, like every year, it feels like with my team, obviously we're having a defensive coordinator change this year. Could that change some of what we do in terms of our attacking with the positional needs and flexibility with the difference in scheme or anything like that? But I think defense, especially the corner and the trenches, is really what we're going to need to focus on in the draft this year.
So are you
Yeah.
not comfortable in going to next season with Keyshawn Nixon as your CB1?
Safe to say I'm not. And I'm sure you guys can pull up multiple texts where I said that's my guy, like Nixon's my guy, he's a dog. But unfortunately, I get proved wrong every single year when he's there. He's obviously had like some good moments at the beginning of last season. He was playing well. I'm gonna give him his flowers there. But just over a 17 game season, and when you're gonna need to win 3 to 4 games in the playoffs every single year if you want to win the Super Bowl, he's not gonna be a corner one that can actually do that. Like it's as much as like he talks the talk. He's not always walking the walk. I'll just put it like that. So I need a guy. I want a corner that's always talking the talk, but I need a guy that's walking the walk too. So we'll put it like that.
I mean, like he was a Pro Bowler though, so no, I'm just kidding. We know how that
Uh,
goes. But
Yeah, so Shador Sanders, but it's all good.
yeah, I was gonna say so is Shooter Sanders. So I think we know by now Pro Bowlers doesn't mean exactly everything.
I guess one, oh, and real quick before I ask you the question, like always got to shout out the fact that the Packers somehow finessed a fourth round pick for Sean Gary. Don't know how they did that, but shout out
Yeah.
the GM there. And I guess the one question I have for you on like offense is, are you at all concerned about like the running back room with like Jacobs being a bit injury prone last year, and then Emmanuel Wilson, I think he departed to the Seahawks, if I'm not mistaken, some team.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say I'm not necessarily worried about Jacobs in the starting role. And obviously, we didn't do anything in free agency. Obviously, the biggest move would have been to get a guy like Kenneth Walker or something like that, which I had seen like reported slightly, but I wouldn't have wanted the team to do that. I'm glad we didn't do that because I like sticking with Jacobs. I think Jacobs really developed well with Jordan Love, especially, and sort of developed more into a receiving back, which is good. We didn't really see that in Las Vegas when he was with the Raiders. So I like what we see there. I do think we need to fill out the back end of that position. Marshawn Lloyd is a guy that we've drafted 2 years ago and expected him to step into that starting role or that backup role for Josh Jacobs and sort of give him that spell as like the third down back and be a guy that can come in and sort of be that receiving back. If he can learn to block better, be a pass protection back on third down. But he's just been so injury prone. He's barely been able to stay on the field for games, let alone like training camp or preseason games or things like that. So I think that's, I mean, the Packers aren't the type of team that's going to cut bait with them just after these 2 years. They're still going to give him another chance. Whether or not I think that's the right idea is a different story. I would probably move off of him by now. I just think it's pretty obvious he's not going to be able to stay healthy. But I'd like to see them attack that same type of position. Get the type of guy that's going to be a change of pace back from Jacobs and let him like have a little bit of spell from like the workload. Don't give him like all the 20 carries every single game like he was having to have. Get those carries down closer to like 14, 15 if you can, and let another running back come in and get those carries. And obviously, I think having a better offensive line is going to help with that too. We saw like last year, Josh Jacobs was having to do way too much work behind the line of scrimmage. There was just too much defensive penetration and how he had to make so many different cuts and everything in the backfield and things like that. Allow the offensive line to get a couple yards pushed down forward, move the line of scrimmage forward a little bit, get him more space to work with. He's a really good downhill back. Just get him that space to work with so he can navigate the offensive line. And I think this overall doing things like that is just going to help him have a better season and make him less injury prone, like we mentioned before.
And then yeah, like I mean, yeah, like for me, just based on like the eye test, like Josh Jacobs is probably one of the best like pure runners of the football in the league right now. Like I'd put him up there with anyone. So, and then like sticking on offense, how do you? Because I mean, like as I think we can all say it now, like the guys that like the jersey you're wearing right now, he's that guy. Jordan Love is definitely the best quarterback in the NFC North. But how do you feel about like the wide receiver room surrounding him? Obviously, we saw like Matthew Golden kind of break out in the playoffs, but anything you want to like fix going into the draft, or pretty good with the guys you got so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said before, I trust in Jordan's ability to elevate the receiver room. So obviously, we don't want him going into a season with a lot of players that we deem like lower quality receivers or having him miss like some of the best guys in the room, like missing Christian Watson or Matthew Golden. So the key to those guys staying healthy, but I expect and trust Jordan Love to elevate the guys that we see behind them. So we obviously see guys, the two starters, I think are going to be the two main pieces, Christian Watson and Matthew Golden. Christian Watson, I believe, is a bona fide wide receiver one. I think Matthew Golden, he has the talent to be a wide receiver one, but I'm not sure he's just going to be that. Partly because of the offensive system that he's going to be in. We don't really have that like need for the wide receiver one type, especially once we move out Devontae. And I think Watson's just better. He's going to be taking more of those targets and more of those roles, but he can be a very serviceable wide receiver too. We have two guys that sort of playing that like slot, sort of like a hybrid of like a sort of similar to that running back build. And Savion Williams, Jaden Reed, two of like the shorter guys, but a little bit of stockier build. So we like to see that from the slot. I like the guys we have there. And the Dontavian Wicks trade, like you mentioned before, Tish knows that I've literally been a Dontavian Wicks supporter since day one. I've called him the next Devontae, but that was mostly because he dropped the ball so much in the first 2 years. And I was expecting that similar to Devontae, he had those two first years that were really bad with drops, and he was able to get over that and became one of the best receivers in the league. I don't know if I really expected that to happen from Wicks, but I did expect to see a better third season from him, and we just didn't see that. So you're able to take a guy that was a 6th round pick for you, and you're able to ship him off, and then get a 6th round pick for this year's draft, and I think, or either a 5th round pick or a 6th round pick for this year's draft, and then get one more pick in a following year. So they're able to do that, and you could say maybe for this season is a current 6th round pick in the draft that's upcoming in a couple days going to help you more than a current Dontavian Wicks? Probably not, but you have to look at it in terms of how much was Dontavian Wicks going to help you in the next couple years. As much as I love the guy, probably not, and you could probably do something better or at least get that value in the 6th round in this year or the next year. So I would say what they need to do is just like bolster the, like I said, like for some of the other positions, bolster like the bottom end of the depth chart. Make sure you have enough guys that are serviceable enough to rotate in every now and then and get some reps for them, and let the top guys get some of their workload down.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of summarizes our like overview going into the draft. And now let's talk about some actual prospects. I guess we can go in like order of most to least picks. We got obviously Aki with two top 10 picks, and then we got Jay with no day one picks. So let's start with you, Aki. What do you want to see your team do?
Yeah, I think that just going off the needs that I discussed earlier, I think that right guard and interior defensive lineman can be addressed in free agency. I know that the Giants have already agreed to a contract with DJ Reader after the draft. So I think that, I mean, obviously he's not as good as Dexter Lawrence, but I think pairing him up with a 2nd round defensive tackle, maybe like Peter Woods or Caden McDonald might be hopefully replicable of the efforts of Dexter Lawrence. And I think outside of that, our biggest needs are linebacker and safety. And I think that, having two top 10 picks, it's very interesting in which way we can go. That's why I'm very excited to go to the draft on Thursday in person because you don't know which way they can go. They can either go two picks on offense, one defense, one offense, or both on defense. Personally, at pick five, I'd go with Sonny Styles, the linebacker from Ohio State. I think that, I mean, I go with him because mean, first of all, his athletic build, similar to Calvin Johnson. You have Megatron playing as linebacker is very impressive. Sonny Styles is a very good tackler. He rarely missed tackles, which is something that our linebackers struggled with last season, especially Bobby Okereke. And Sonny Styles does have that background experience in the secondary, so he does move like a safety. He's very good in pass coverage, so I think that will be very beneficial for us. So that's who I would pick with the 5th overall pick. Then with the 10th overall pick, I think that personally, if Caleb Downs is on the board, I will go with him. I think that he is, if not one of then the best safety prospect of all time. He's very refined and polished in how he plays the way he's able to mimic routes, his downhill speed, his run defending, his ability to just basically be a pro in the pass coverage is very impressive. And I think that Caleb Downs next to Javon Holland will be a great safety duo for our team. So, I mean, I don't know if Caleb Downs might go to pick 10. I feel like the only reason he would drop to pick 10 is because of positional value. But if he does not drop to pick 10, I think that what I would go instead is with a receiver. And personally, out of the three top bona fide receivers in Mekhi Lemon and Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson, I would prefer Jordan Tyson at pick 10. I know that Joe Shane, uh, he did meet with Jordan Tyson. He went out to dinner with him. He went to Arizona multiple times to see him play in this past week. So I think that Jordan Tyson would be the pick if Caleb Downs is not chosen at pick 10. And personally, I would love Jordan Tyson. I think that compared to the other two receivers, he is very explosive off the line of scrimmage. His yards after catch is phenomenal. I think that he would be a great receiver to pair next to Malik Neighbors. So honestly, just all in all, I think you can't go wrong regardless. You get either Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles, which can be the future of our defense, or you get one of those two in Jordan Tyson to pair next to Malik Neighbors. So you really can't go wrong. And if it does go wrong, it's just a travesty. Tragedy. I mean, I will not know what to say if it does go wrong. So
Yeah.
so I'm very excited for Thursday and really excited to see what will happen live.
I mean, I kind of like the sounds of getting Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs. I mean, as much as I don't like this team, that could be like a future Ray Lewis, Ed Reed type of like potential duo there.
The
And
duo
then
that
like,
John Harbaugh had to win a championship with. I mean, he's on the Giants. He might have that again.
let's see what he does there. See if he can save his coaching legacy. But yeah, and then Jordan Tyson, like I feel like to me, he's like he should be the wide receiver one of the draft. I mean, I understand like Carnell Tate is definitely this like the highest floor out of all the guys,
Hmm.
probably the best route runner, most consistent like guy in the slot and everything. But Jordan Tyson has like that wide receiver like one frame. Like he's got that bona fide prototypical wide receiver one body. He's explosive. We saw him like post a couple like clips on his social media. He just
Yeah,
his big.
he was
I mean,
levitating.
he's literally like double jumping in the air. It's insane. But he's obviously his like biggest question mark has been his like injury history. He's had
Hmm.
like multiple knee injuries. So I think that's resulted in like his stock dropping down to maybe like below Carnell Tate. But I think yeah. So I guess my that leads into my question is like how confident are you in like Jackson Dart in year two? Like obviously year one, he pretty much exceeded a lot of expectations, taken in like the back end of round one. And there are a lot of question marks like, oh, like why did they draft him over Shador Sanders, like other guys? And ended up playing pretty well. I will say he had like a lot of production from like the rushing standpoint. So how confident are you as him as your like uh quarterback going into next year?
Yeah, man, I think regardless of how he performs, I think that just based off his rookie year, he did exceed expectations. He wasn't even expected to play. He was supposed to sit behind Russell Wilson, but then you had Brian Dable playing him to save his job. But he eventually did get fired because of Shane Bowen, not because of playing Russell Wilson. But regardless of that, I think that Dart was very impressive, especially with all the injuries surrounding him on the receiver group you had. Malik Neighbors out for the year, and you only had Wan'Dale Robinson as wide receiver one. And now Wan'Dale Robinson is good, but I think the Giants did make the right moves in free agency to set Jackson Dart up for success. You got Isaiah Likely, you got Calvin Austin, you got Darnell Mooney. And I mean, Tish knows the quote. I mean, Sauce Gardner said that Calvin Austin was the hardest receiver he played with ever. So I think uh, I think they did set him up for success based off free agency. And and lastly, I think that the draft is what's going to finalize Dart's development. I think if they're able to get a receiver for him and a right guard in the second round, I think he might have an MVP year next season. Maybe similar to what Drake May had this past year.
All right, well, let's temper our expectations there a bit, but I mean, yeah, definitely exciting for you going into Thursday. We'll see what happens. I guess I'll talk about Steelers prospects here. So we have one like pick in the first round at pick 21. Always seem to like find our way around that like early 20s, just like making the playoffs and losing right away. But I think so. As I said, like our biggest need is definitely guard, and the guy that stands out to me is definitely Vega Ioane from Penn State. He's like an absolute dog. He's got that like typical O lineman build. He's like 6'4", 320 pounds, and he's lost some weight because he's had some like mobility issues keeping up with like athletic guys. But I think he's like a guy that could come in year one, kind of like we saw with like when we drafted Zach Frazier in the past, and like Troy Fatano this year, who can just like produce from day one. So he would be really impactful. I think the problem is like, will he be around at pick 21? Not sure, but that's where having all those top 100 picks could be beneficial, trading up to like maybe pick 15, 14. And then if not, like addressing wide receiver, to me, that's always like benefit. I understand like receiver is definitely one of the more addressable situations, like in free agency. You don't have to always draft the first round guy, but I think this year's like talent is really, really good at wide receiver. There's a lot of good first round, early second round talent. And obviously, I'd love Jordan Tyson, but like being realistic with like pick 21, to me, if like Makai Lemon falls down there somehow, or we have to trade up to get him, that would be good. Just because like right now, the Steelers' two best receivers and the only two receivers we really have are both like X guys, kind of just like put on the outside and go deep, and Michael Pittman and DK Metcalf. So we don't really have like a good slot guy. That's what Calvin Austin was, but he's on the Giants now. So I think like getting a slot guy like Makai Lemon could be good. Obviously, he was like the Blitnikoff winner at USC this year, and he can handle like a really high volume workload, which has been one problem. That was supposed to be Roman Wilson for us, but that obviously has failed to like a crazy degree. So getting Makai Lemon or another guy who could be good, who would probably be more likely to be available around pick 21 would be Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana. He's like 6 feet tall. He runs a 4.40. He's a really good slot guy as well, and he's a good like guy in the end zone. I think he was third in the FBS in touchdowns. So I think overall, to me, in the first round, especially getting either like the guard out of Penn State or getting any of those two slot receivers would be the best to address any immediate needs. And then getting like a DB in the later rounds, like D'Angelo Pons or Malik Muhammad out of Texas, any of those two guys would be good just to add depth in the corner and safety room there.
Yeah, I think Makai Lemon is probably the best slot receiver in the draft. I mean, you have two very good X receivers in DK and Pittman, but I think just going off just the reports and what I've been seeing in mock drafts, I feel like you'll have all top three receivers in Tate, Tyson, and Makai Lemon all going in the top 10. I think the Chiefs and Saints and the Giants, they might all go receivers. So I think the slot receivers after Mekhi Lemon, like Omar Cooper or Casey Conspecion, I think they're both very good slot receivers that can play that wide receiver three role next to DK. And Pittman and honestly could set up Aaron Rodgers for more success. And even if you do end up drafting that rookie quarterback, combining those three receivers with that very good O-line could set that up for success. So it's just sticking to my belief that the Steelers are always a quarterback away from being the best in the league.
That was right. Yeah.
Don't worry, you have that quarterback, number 12. You still got that. All right, he's number 8 now. You still got that quarterback. So we'll touch on some of the Packers draft prospects. Like we mentioned before, with the first round pick, not there because of the Micah Parsons trade. We're looking at guys that are sort of going to fill in like those bench roles and like depth pieces and things like that. First guy we'll touch on, he's on the edge rusher slot, Denine Dennis Sutton from Penn State. He's a guy that he's really played well in terms of a pass rusher with just like his physicality and things like that and being able to get through like some of the smaller offensive linemen. He does struggle with some of like the pad level and things like that from what I've seen before and like some scouts have said about him. And he is like in terms of like the athleticism among like the different defensive edges and like defensive ends and edge rushers and things like that. He does have a high athleticism score there based on his like stats from like the combine and things like that. But I do want to see just like him using that athleticism and just using that more overall and being a better pass rusher as a result of that. Next guy I'm going to look at for one of our picks, this would be at the corner position. And this guy I would expect to take him closer to like the third round or even fourth round if he falls a little bit further. This guy's going to be a little bit more of a depth piece, but this is more just because of how many games he started. We're looking at Dalen Everett. He's a corner from Georgia. This guy started a lot of games just at Georgia overall, 41 games, and he played in the SEC, so it's a really strong conference, obviously. And the Packers have really had just a penchant for going after these guys that are from Georgia. Obviously, going with Devontae Wyatt and Quay Walker in the same draft in 2022, and just getting other Georgia guys like Eric Stokes in the past. This is still all under the same general management regime and things like that. So he's just a strong overall cornerback position player. He has good size and things like that. And he is somewhat of a willing run tackler, but he needs to work on that a little bit. So just looking at two guys like that, these would be good depth pieces, I would say, to both the edge rusher room and the corner room. Those guys wouldn't be expected to start right away, but I'd like to see them as players that could potentially develop into starters along the road.
Yeah, I mean, just see what you can do with that second round pick there. Not everyone has to think about day two as much as someone in this call, but I mean, obviously it was for
Not
Micah
everyone, not everyone
Parsons.
has Micah Parsons in their team. Also, let's put that out there.
I
So
mean, do the
yeah,
Packers
Yeah,
really have Micah Parsons with his injury?
now he'll be back better than ever. Better than ever.
Trent
Oh,
Jordan
we'll
Watt
see.
has something to say about that, just or even I don't believe that.
Yeah, okay. I think that's a sign. That's enough for the draft talk for today.
All right, I think that's gonna cap it off for this week. So thanks for coming on again, Aki, in your Giants uniform. Hopefully, they let you call the pick on the stage on Thursday. And speaking of that, we'll probably try to see if we can get some live reactions to the drafts. Aki and I on day one, Jay on day two, that second round pick. But yeah, we'll be back next week with some NBA playoff content and see what else we can provide.